slides. Okay, this talk is basically about some quirks in JavaScript for people who migrate from, like, who have been in the Ruby world for a very long time and suddenly jump into JavaScript. They encounter a lot of like weird things going on. So this talk is something about that. It's very highly influenced by a talk that Gary Bernhardt gave just a couple of days back. Oops. I'm really bad at this stuff. So you guys can check out his talk at the URL. Gary Bernhardt is he's one of the guys who hosts the events at his office, Code Mash. Great guy. So yeah, let's have a look at a couple of this stuff. So in Ruby, if you do something like this, var1 equal to var2, and then like var1, you get a nil. But in JS, it's going to give reference errors in both of them. Kind of strange. Probably like show it on IRB. Var2, get a local variable error. Var1 gives you nil, right? Okay, just for your information, the JS code is running on Node version 0.7. So it's the latest ECMAScript 5. So the parser is going to be the same as most of the modern browsers like Chrome. Just for example, like var1 running var2. So in this case, it treats var1 as one of the variables which is getting assigned unreferenced variable, right? And then, of course, this is kind of normal, but the thing happening in Ruby is kind of not normal. You don't expect that value to be nil. Okay. Here's another quirk. This is kind of like expected, right? Like a string and an object. Yes, you cannot do that because you cannot convert the hash into a string. Quirky stuff. Woo. That is an object getting combined with a string. So, well, the takeaway is that Ruby is strongly typed, JavaScript is weakly typed. So, when it does the plus operation, it converts everything to string and then appends them. Okay, this is kind of something that we, I guess, already encountered. Okay, one more funny thing. Array operations. 1, 2, and 4 treats as a normal array appending. So you basically get like a concatenated array. JavaScript still doesn't understand stuff. Treats them as a string. Okay. What happens when you concat an object with an array? Kind of expected, right? A hash doesn't support a plus operation. Trying to append it with an array gives you an error. Again, so kind of strange, right? Because hash getting concatenated with an array. This thing, now comes the weirdest version. So this thing runs on Node, and the parser is ECMAScript 5, right? Go to the console and do the same thing. That's the latest version of Chrome. gives you 0. And it is also parsing using the same ECMAScript. I don't really know the reason why. Somebody, if somebody finds it out, do let me know. Okay. What happens if you just change the operators like the, so in this case it complains on hash not being converted to an array, which is kind of fine because array supports a plus operation in Ruby, right? What happens in JS? Still kind of the same thing that you expected. And this one does not have any quirks in the browser, right? Okay. Array plus array gives you a concatenated array. This is kind of expected from the last two result sets, right? That in JavaScript, if you are concatenating arrays, basically they are like concatenated as two separate strings and gives you back an empty string. So takeaway is never compare this kind of operations to strings in JavaScript. It's kind of very dangerous, like array and array combined, and you are comparing it to another array. That's never going to work. Okay. What happens when you concat two objects? Undefined method, kind of expected. Two objects. Okay. That is kind of expected too, right? What happens here? Whoa, that says not a number. Strange, right? They are the same parser. It's the same parser running everywhere on the browser and on the node console. It's the same parser, ECMAScript 5, but still gives you two different versions. Okay. Alright. Some string plus an integer. Type error. Strongly typed language, kind of expect that. Perfectly fine. What happens in JS? Just gets concatenated as a string. Okay. What happens when you do this? Obviously, the string in Ruby does not support a minus, right? Sorry. But what happens when you do this in a JavaScript console? Not a number. It does support a minus operator on the string, but it treats, whenever you get a minus operator with a right-hand operand, it treats the first one as a number, and when it tries to parse that, it sees that, okay, I cannot parse this thing, I'll just throw a not a number. Quirky. Okay, kind of easy one. Ruby supports this, and sorry, JS does not. Again, the multiplication operator is treated like as one of the operands is treated as number. It doesn't work. Okay, so all right, let's deal with some of the nil and null stuff, which is kind of very funny in JavaScript because you've got two different kind of nils, undefined and null, right? Okay. What happens when you do nil dot to I? Gives you back 0, which is fine, right? You would probably expect something similar. Oh, not a number. What happens when you deal with null? Still not a number. Okay. Blank string dot to I gives you 0. Biggest takeaway: don't do this in Ruby. Whenever you are getting parameters from the request, like a post or something, don't just append a dot to I to it. Very deadly, because you saw the result right here, right? Okay, what happens if you try to parse a blank string, not a number? Okay, doesn't work here. Nil.2s gives you back a blank string. What happens if you do undefined toString? So it cannot call toString on an undefined object, right? Undefined is not an object. It's one of the keywords. Null is. What happens when you do it on null? Still doesn't work, right? Okay. Here's something that we guys use a lot in Ruby. A number.2s, right? Easy stuff. What happens when you do that? Kind of expect it to turn into a string, right? Oh, that's a syntax error. It does not work. Check this out. That works, right? So the possible explanation for this is because 2 is a number and you put a dot after that. Whenever it finds a dot after a number, it thinks that it's a float. So it tries to parse the next part after the dot as a digit, as a number. But basically it cannot understand it, so it says, oh, it's a syntax error, because I was expecting something else. Okay, now here comes the quirkiest version. Dot dot toString. That works. Right? Okay. Zeros and stuff. Okay. 0 by 0, kind of expected absolute value of 0 divided by absolute value of 0. Basic mathematics gives you back a 0 division error. Float by a 0, that's a real number divided by a 0, gives you back infinite, right? 0 by 0 in JS gives you back not a number. Ooh. And real number by 0 also gives you back not a number. That's a mathematical flaw in the system. Okay, how about this? And 2f gives you back 0.0. That's kind of a similarity, right? Because you can do that. You can do that. That gives you back a NaN. So, if it's not a number in Ruby and you're trying to convert it to float, gives you back 0. But if it's not a number and you're trying to convert it to float in JavaScript, gives you back not a number, which is perfectly fine. Okay, I was just kidding with you guys. Anything in Ruby .2f gives you back 0. Alright, some of the basic differences in JavaScript and Ruby. How they treat a false value. In Ruby, string is not equal to false, blank array is not equal to false, and 0 is not equal to false either. In JS world, all of them are. So that is false. Sorry. That is false, and that's false, and so is 0. So in JS world, blank array, blank string, 0, all of them are treated as a false value. Okay, that's what we learned on this slide, right? Let's go to the next one. Let's do some basic AND operations on a bunch of stuff that we just encountered sometime back. In Ruby, this thing is kind of expected, right? If you are concatenating, if you are performing an AND over two entities like this, it tries to parse the first one, finds whether the value is a false or not. If it's not, then it moves on to the next one, right? Yeah, so I mean, it's not in Ruby, in any language. So that thing basically returns you back the last entity it encountered, right? Same happens for this, and same thing happens for concatenating and with doing a double AND operation with 0 and string. So you always get back the last entity that it encounters, right? Let's see what happens in JS. So 0, if you perform an AND with that, gives you back 0, because 0 gets treated as a false, so it never goes past 0, right? Because we just learned that 0 and a blank array and a blank string, they're all supposed to be false in JavaScript. What happens when you do that? That is as we expect it to be, right? Oh, that's not, because it just went past the blank array, whereas blank array was evaluating to false, right? So yeah, that's quirky. So what happens if you do with 0 and an empty string? Always stays at 0, empty string and 0 stays at empty string. These are all perfectly fine because you expect them to be like that. It encounters the first false value and exits. Except for with the blank array. It actually goes past the blank array, although blank array is being treated as false. So be aware of this situation. Never return values like that in JS. Okay. Alright, that's kind of scary. It's very scary. That is what you expect it to be. You are trying to do an equality check between 5 and an integer and a string representation of the integer. Don't do this in JS world. That's why people suggest using a strict equal. So what a strict equal does is it does a type check as well. That's one of the ways of making the language understand that, okay, you can mess things up really bad if you're doing this. So, we will provide you with another option to do a strong type check. So yeah, always use that. Strict equality. This is my favorite part. All this time we were thinking that these objects are the same, right? That gives you, because it does not have the key. How does this work? I thought that hashes and JavaScript objects, they're pretty much the same kind of stuff, right? But as we saw, it just returned back a string. Well, in this case, ECMAScript parses the braces as a closure. So it never treats it as a key value pair. That's also one of the reasons why these things were trying to return, that NN thing. It was in the browser. Yeah, that thing. That was also working because in the first case it parses it as a closure and gets back an empty value which is null. Look at that, undefined. Okay, and the last one is pretty simple. This is something that you kind of expect to be happening in Ruby world, like a strict equality check. So Ruby has got a strict equality check as well. If you guys never used it, I don't know. String.new. Hey, that's true. That is not so true in JS world. Oop. How does this work though? That is true. The type check fails. Type of A is string, and type of new string will be an object. Really weird language. That was my presentation, guys. Thanks a lot. You guys can follow me. Come by at the Payroll Hero office, or if you guys want to grab a drink, share some open source code, drop by or just email me. I'll be more than happy to work with you guys. Thanks.